Hello and welcome to Math 8 Unit 1A Lesson 10. Today's objectives are that scholars will solve problems using the Pythagorean theorem. Okay, so basics. Find the missing length of the triangle first, and you need to share your work. First thing is we need to decide which side is side C because they're not always to be called sides A, B, and C. So again, we go directly across from our right angle is side C. So we start off by writing our A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Sides A, B, and C. So I have 6 squared plus 8 squared equals C squared. That is 36 plus 64 equals C squared. 36 and 64 is 100. So if 100 equals C squared, we take the square root of both sides. I get 10 equals C. Nice and easy. Okay, notice here, first thing we do is identify side C, but we're actually finding side B. So again, I'm going to start off with A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Side A is going to be 5, so I have 5 squared plus B squared equals C. Ooh, not C. I know what C is. It is 13 squared. Again, you can use a calculator for this, but this ends up giving me 25 plus B squared equals 169. My next step is going to be to go ahead and subtract the 25 from both sides. So I have 25 minus 25, not minus 24, minus 25, plus B squared equals 169 minus 25. Then I'm going to combine these. Obviously, 25 minus 25 is just going to go away, but I have the 169 minus 25 left. So I have over here, I have B squared equals 144. You take the square root of both sides. I get B equals 12. Again, nice and easy. Okay, side 3. Again, first thing we're going to do is we're going to find that side C. So I know that's side C. So I have A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So I'm left with A squared plus 2.1 squared equals 2.9 squared. So I'm going to square these again. I'm going to use a calculator for this. So I get 2.1 squared is 4.41. So I have A squared plus 4.41 equals 2.9 squared is 8.41. So now I'm going to subtract what's over here with my A. So I have A squared plus 4.41 minus 4.41 equals 8.41 minus 4.41. Going to simplify this. I end up with A squared, because plus 4.41 and minus 4.41 goes away, equals 8.41 minus 4.41 gives me 4. So I take the square root of both sides, and I get A equals 2. Okay. So here is another one for us. So as we can see, this is side C, 25. So I am looking at side B. So I have A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So A is going to be 15. So I have 15 squared plus B squared equals 25 squared. So I have 225 plus B squared equals 625. Going to subtract what is over here. So I have 225 minus 225 plus b squared equals 625 minus 225. So when I combine my like terms, I get b squared equals 400. When I take the square root of both sides, I get b equals 20. Again, nice and easy. Okay, so now let's look at some of these where we're asked to explain. So, your friend finds the missing length of the triangle. Is your friend correct? Explain your reasoning. So here is the triangle my friend's looking at it. I have a side that's 12, a side that's 8, and a side I don't know. So they said a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Well, that part's got to be right. 8 squared plus 12 squared equals c squared. So they end up with 208 equals c squared. So c is the square root of 208. So I want you to think about that for a minute. What is the very first thing we do when we're looking at these triangles? Every time we are going to identify c. So which side is c? They said c was our unknown side, and they solved for c. But if you notice, c is 12. So we're missing either side A or B. So we'll leave side A as 8. So we're going to start from this line. So I'm going to have 8 squared. But this now should be B squared. And then we put the 12 squared over here. So 8 squared is 64. Plus B squared equals 144. So we're going to subtract 64 from both sides. So I have 64 minus 64 plus B squared equals 144 minus 64. So I end up with b squared equals 80. So that means b is the square root of 80. So that is actually the correct one. They mistook which side they were finding and tried to find the wrong side. So when you do that, you notice there's a big difference between the square root of 80 and the square root of 208. So make sure you're very careful about that. Okay, so here's sort of a fun one. You have to find x. These little hash marks on these sides mean that they are all the same length. Since we know that we're all the same length, we know that this side must be the same length as this side. So I can write down on here that that side is 20 yards. So now I know that side is 20, that side is 21. I'm finding my hypotenuse. I know that because it's across from my right angle. So I can do 20 squared plus 21 squared equals x squared. Well, 20 squared is simply 400. Plus 21 squared is, use my calculator, because I don't know that. What is 441? Equals x squared. So 400 plus 441 is 841 equals x squared. We take the square root of both sides, which means that 29 equals x. So I take the square root of my calculator. So that wasn't that bad. Let's try another one. Okay, so the direct path I usually take to work has a large pothole. The direct path is 18.5 miles. In order to avoid the pothole, I drive 15 miles. I drive south 15 miles, then turn east. So I drive south 15 miles and turn east. Here's my original path. How far do I have to drive east to get to my destination? How many more miles do I have to drive to go around the potholes? There's two questions here. So let's look at the first question first, which is, how far do I need to drive east to get to my destination? So I'm finding this length here. Okay, so again, we're going to do our wonderful a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So here's my right angle. So I'm finding either a or b. So I have a squared plus 15 squared equals 18.5 squared. So I have a squared plus 225 equals 18.5 squared is 342.25. I'm going to subtract 225 from both sides. So I end up with a squared equals 117.25. Take the square root from both sides. I get a equals sorry, I put it in my calculator. 10.83. So this side is 10.83. So that's the first answer. Then I have another question, though. The other question asked me, how many more miles do I have to drive to go around the pothole? So my original route was 18.5. My new route to go around my pothole is going to be 15 plus 10.83, which is 25.83. So I'm going to subtract my original root of 18.5. That gives me 3, and so that's my second answer. That's how much extra I have to drive, is 7.33 miles to get around that. Okay, one final problem. In this case, we're just being asked to explain. Can a right triangle have a leg, remember the legs of the sides are not the hypotenuse, that is 10 meters long, and a hypotenuse that is 10 meters long? Explain. Well, remember we talked about this. The hypotenuse, remember this is our hypotenuse, is always the longest side. It cannot be the same length as one of the other sides. It is always the longest side. So the answer is no, because the hypotenuse is always the longest side. Because the longest side is always across from the greatest angle. And 90 must be the greatest angle. Okay, so go ahead and work on the rest of your working class, and I will see you then. See me with any questions.